Ding, ding. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I confirm that we do have quorum. Councillor Cloutier and Councillor Schumacher couldn't make it, but we do have quorum. And I'm going to ask Councillor Renwick to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you very much. All right. On our agenda, the second item needed to be pulled and will be moved to a future meeting. So I have a motion moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that Planning Council meeting agenda dated June 10, 2026 be adopted as printed and circulated with the deletion of the following item. Report number DEV 2026-50, CPP 37 2026 HTE, Mastorillo 3545 South Portage Road. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. All right. There are no public meetings, so we will now move on to the non-public portion of the meeting. The meeting will proceed as follows. Staff will provide a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application along with any correspondence received to date. The applicant or the representative may offer additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, staff, or any of the presenters. After all input is received, Council will consider the application. Any person making representation is asked to first state their name and mailing address, and please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. For community planning permit applications only the applicant themselves may appeal a decision. As a reminder, if the applicant or their agent wishes to make comments regarding their application, they may do so after the staff presentation. If Council approves any bylaw amendment applications this afternoon, a notice of a decision will be issued commencing a 20-day appeal period. During the period, and in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, the applicant, the municipality, and eligible persons and public bodies may file an appeal. No building permits may be issued, nor any related work proceed during the appeal period. Anyone wishing to receive notice of a bylaw's passage, any appeals, or possible Ontario Land Tribunal proceedings must submit a written request prior to the bylaw's passage. Requests may be filed with the recording secretary or the clerk. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with that, we're going to move to the first one. Lisa is going to speak to the Fox Lake Road application. Whenever you're ready, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you, the subject property for this application is 366 East Fox Lake Road. The property is within the waterfront area in the official plan and the waterfront residential 60-meter WR1 precinct in the community planning permit bylaw, with natural constraints overlay 1 indicating type 1 fish habitat and natural constraints 2 overlay indicating steep slopes. The property is accessed by East Fox Lake Road, which is a year-round municipal maintained local road. The purpose and effect of this application is to permit the construction of a 175.6 square meter detached 2-story dwelling with a walkout basement and stone retaining wall, and a 47.5 meter square detached 2-story garage, with the garage to be used for storage purposes only. A Class 2 staff variation is required to reduce the minimum required setback from the top of a steep slope. So I've just highlighted where that slope is, the top of the slope is there with red, from 15 meters to 6.7 meters. So that's the setback shown there. for a detached dwelling and 0 meters for a retaining wall. So if I can zoom in, the retaining wall, you can see, comes right up to the slope there and also is within the area of steep slope. So it's those two sections in front of the dwelling. Also to reduce the minimum required setback from type 1 fish habitat from 30 meters to 18.26 meters. So that's shown with that newly added red line there for a detached dwelling, and 15 meters for a retaining wall. So that's the setback there. To increase the maximum permitted primary coverage on the lot from 10% to 10.5%. To reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 20 meters to 18.26 meters, which is already highlighted in addition to the type 1 fish habitat for a detached dwelling, and to reduce the minimum required northerly side yard setback from 6 meters to 1.25 meters for the detached garage. Although all of the requested reliefs qualify as Class 2 variations, the Fox Lake Association did submit a letter of objection in response to the circulation of the application with concerns related to the proximity of the proposed development to the type 1 fish habitat abutting a large portion of the shore. The Lake Association stated they felt the 12-meter reduction from the 30-meter requirement was more than a minor reduction, and that they would like to see the dwellings situated to comply with the 30-meter setback. These comments have been included in the agenda package as attachment number 4. In response to the objection, the Director of Development Services has forwarded the application for review to Planning Council as a Class 3 community planning permit in accordance with Section 1.14.5 of the CPP bylaw. The applicants did submit a fish habitat assessment in support of their proposal, which included mitigation measures to protect against negative impacts from the development to the type 1 fish habitat and in relation to the steep slopes. As previously noted, the application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit bylaw. The town's building department responded by requesting the applicants apply for their septic permit prior to issuance of the community planning permit, so that's been included as a condition of provisional approval. The building department also stated that the foundations will need to be pinned by an Ontario land surveyor. And the town's fire department advised that the owners should consider incorporating Fire Smart Canada's design principles into their development. So a guide with these principles has been forwarded to the applicants. Given the analysis of the town's policy and the proposal, the application appears to conform with the official plan and the provincial planning statement. And as such, staff are recommending approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments if they wish. If you'd like to, come on down. Need to use the microphone as well. Welcome.
Members of council, I'm Scott Shepley, property owner of 366 East Fox Lake Road, along with my wife, Karen. I would just like to give you a little bit of the backstory behind the history of the lot, if I may. The property's been in the Shepley family for over 60 years, and the family's been coming to Fox Lake for many years before that for summer vacations. We became owners of this property in 2018, purchasing from my aunt, with intentions to build a family cottage right away. We started the process. We contracted an architect who would design nearby cottages, and he formed a design, but with health reasons, he was able to complete the plan with delaying us a little bit more. Delays with COVID, my mom's passing, and cyber attack. Our second architect completed the plan, working to fit the dwelling within the confines of the setbacks, taking into consideration waterfront, surrounding area, septic area, and existing trees. In that effort to preserve 2 beech trees on the site, the corner of the covered porch pushes from the 20 meters to 18.26 meters. The proposed dwelling could be straightened to meet the 20-meter setback, but both the beech trees would have to be removed. Working with the town to meet their conditions and hiring TerraStory and innovative planning solutions to complete assessments of the shoreline and fish habitat to do an environmental impact study, the town's requirements were shown to be met. Tristan Knight from TerraStory wasn't able to join us today, but because he had other commitments. He did submit a letter, which I would like to read to you now. Thank you for forwarding the attached objection letter from the Fox Lake Association in relation to your community planning permit application. I reviewed the objection letter and can offer the following comments. First, as you know, Terry Story completed the fish and habitat assessment as part of the CCP application. Our fish habitat assessment report was originally submitted November 2024 and was lightly updated April 2025 to address certain town comments on the application. A fish habitat assessment is a technical objective exercise which determines the potential for impacts to fish. As part of the development proposal, it is our opinion, as evidenced in the fish habitat assessment, that your proposal will not negatively impact fish habitat. The shoreline of your property is considered unevaluated at the date of we performed our site visits in 2024. This means that the ministry had not previously assessed the shoreline to determine the significance or sensitivity of fish habitat. Our fieldwork indicated the presence of aquatic vegetation or weeds at a density and coverage which we believe met the standard for type 1 fish habitat in Fox Lake, which is the most significant sensitive type of fish habitat. That being said, there are a variety of degrees of functional significance across different type 1 fish habitats. And what we found for your shoreline is similar to much of the existing developed shoreline on Fox Lake, where small but widespread areas of aquatic vegetation appear to be common. In other words, your shoreline appears to possess similar aquatic characteristics and functions as much of the Fox Lake waterfront. Areas of Fox Lake already known to contain type 1 fish habitat determined by the MNR reflect potential pike spawning habitats in Northern Bay and certain stream mouths narrow inlets. These areas contain denser, more extensive aquatic vegetation and possess more unique and significant habitat value than your shoreline, despite the fact that your shoreline is partially considered type 1 fish habitat. The objection letter suggests that the shoreline of your property is one of the last remaining relatively undisturbed type 1 fish habitats on the lake. The statement appears to be not to appear to be accurately reflect existing conditions on Fox Lake. Based on a review of the current area photographs, I noted relatively undisturbed to undisturbed stretches of shoreline, which are several hundred meters long in the west, northwestern, northeastern, and southeastern shoreline areas, which likely contain type 1 fish habitat due to aquatic vegetation, even though they have not been currently mapped as such. Your shoreline immediately abuts 2 existing waterfront lots with nearby shoreline amenity areas within about 10 to 30 meters to the north and south respectively, and therefore in close proximity to areas of routine human use. I recognize and understand that the Fox Lake Association concern with your request reduction in the shoreline setback in Huntsville type 1 fish habitat is afforded. A minimum of 30-meter setback certainly must be recognized that shoreline buffers are an integral and healthy productive lake access, Huntsville, Muskoka, and the Canadian Shield. With that said, setbacks and buffers from shorelines are generic guidelines and represent varying levels of risk tolerance. They are not hard and fast scientific standards. The establishments of setbacks and buffers must take into account site-specific factors. I know that the proposed septic system is in fact 40 meters from the shoreline and 15 meters of a natural buffer outside the permitted 25% shoreline amenity area. Will be established additional recommendations related to stormwater management, roof leaders, minimize the shoreline pathway width, and situation in the dock. Most appropriate location is also contained in the fish habitat assessment and should be adhered to. Overall, it continues to be my opinion that your development proposal will avoid negative impacts to fish habitat, subject to implementation of the recommendations contained in my fish habitat assessment. So through working with the town, updating all requests, such as leaving the shoreline vegetation undisturbed along the type 1 and only allowing 2-meter path along the type 2 for access to the dock and locating the dock in the type 2 area, maintaining the riparian zone along the type 1 and 2, and introducing control measures to prevent runoff, we have resolved to the satisfaction of the town, As Tristan indicated, there's nothing unique about the shoreline of the property. And with the measures suggested, the type 1 fish habitat will not be affected. I have an initial letter given to me by my neighbor, which states he has no objections to the variances. Reading the conclusions from the innovative planning solutions follows, as demonstrated through the technical reports supported by the proposal in CPP application, drawings, tables, and this planning justification report, the proposed residential development, including variations to standard and mitigation measures, would allow for an orderly development of these lands. We respectively request that the town consider the approval of this request permit to facilitate this proposal. It is our opinion that the proposal represents good planning and reasonable application. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council members, comments or questions? Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you, Mr. Shepley, for all of that information. So the only question I have is, I know staff are recommending approval, but I would like to ask staff, if, in your opinion, what are the most important mitigation measures that we are undertaking in this application that will satisfy the association?
Lisa?
Thank you, and through you, Chair Stone. So there are a number of mitigation measures outlined in the fish habitat study, including keeping a lot of the existing vegetation. Also, as Mr. Shepley mentioned, directing eaves troughs away from the lake. So stormwater will be managed and not reach the lake immediately. It will be filtered through the ground at least before it reaches it. They're also proposing to locate the dock within the area of type 2 fish habitat, and the remainder of the shoreline will be vegetated with the 2-meter wide path maximum to reach the dock.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Well, without asking the same question again, I just want to say, obviously, you're good stewards of the lake. You've been there for many, many years, and I'm sure you're concerned of what happens and where the runoff goes. So I can approve this as is, because I think the only issue is the type 1 fish habitat, but I think mediation will be put in place to ensure that none of that water hits the lake and maintain it the way it is. So thanks.
No other questions from council? I see no more hands. It's a rather lengthy motion, so I'm not going to read it. It's exactly as it is shown in the agenda package. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. All right. All right, we're moving on to the Vernon Shores application, and Kelsey's going to speak to that.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is 273 Vernon Shores Avenue. The property is located within the waterfront designation of the official plan, and the property is within the waterfront residential 60-meter precinct with natural constraint 2 overlay. The purpose of this application is to recognize existing conditions through a class the following existing conditions through a Class 2 community planning permit variation, specifically increasing the number of accessory structures from 3 to 4, permit an increase in the footprints to the detached garage and private cabin, recognize a reduced setback of the dryland boathouse from the lake, and increase the primary lot coverage to 7.5%. Oops, I'll just highlight. So these are some of the accessory buildings. So there's some closer to the road. This one circled now is 2 that are going to be consolidated into 1. And then there's also the private cabin and detached garage, and the deck, which is recognized through the primary lot coverage. And there's a dryland boathouse or a shoreline shed down near the water. So the application has been triggered primarily through a bylaw complaint, which led to a broader review of the property. Staff identified a number of non-complying elements, including the number of accessory structures, the building footprint, lot coverage, and reduced shoreline setback for the dryland boathouse, and the presence of cooking facilities in the private cabin. The owner has agreed to remove the cooking facilities from the private cabin and consolidate the two utility sheds into one, as I highlighted, which brings aspects of the property into closer compliance with the bylaw. Recognizing 4 roofed and enclosed accessory structures is considered appropriate, as 3 structures are located well beyond the shoreline setback and comply with all other applicable requirements. With respect to lot coverage, the proposed increase of 2.5% is also appropriate, resulting in a total overall lot coverage of 8.8%, which remains in the intent of the community planning permit bylaw. The increased footprint of the 2-story garage and associated private cabin is similarly appropriate given the size of the property and the fact that these structures are screened by the shoreline vegetation and the dwelling in front of it. A condition of approval is recommended for the removal of cooking facilities from the private cabin. With this in place, the increased footprint is considered minor and acceptable. Finally, the dryland boathouse is appropriately located within the existing shoreline activity area and is positioned in a relatively level portion of the property, which helps minimize the impacts associated with the site's steep topography. The application was circulated in accordance with the Community Planning Permit Bylaw and the Planning Act, as well as to the Lake Vernon Association. No public comments were received. With the conditions in place, staff are satisfied that the proposal meets the criteria of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw and is consistent with the provincial planning statement, and are recommending provisional approval. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments if they wish. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you. My name's Nick Gabora. My wife is Gia Gabora, 273 Vernon Shores Avenue. This is our house and garage with a small bunkie. I've been on the lake. I thank you for the gentleman behind me. I've been on the lake since 1965, and we've owned this property since 2017. And my wife is from Bracebridge originally, so we are Muskoka people, if that makes any difference. It doesn't anyways. Okay. The property, we followed the plans for the property and had to have a minor variance because of the size of the garage and the living quarters over. So we want to reflect that change by pulling that cooking facility out, and we have. The second part was that shoreline boathouse, which is a 6 by 7 foot Rubbermaid shed. It's relatively small. There's been no landscaping done whatsoever. It's just sitting on a platform to make it slightly level. The other part of that is we purchased the property. It was already excavated with a driveway. We have done our best to keep every tree and do minimal amounts of excavation which our contractors absolutely hated us for because we would fight with them. They wanted to remove trees, and my wife can tell you I'm keep every tree I can. From our our house to the lake, we have not removed any trees. We've kept the shoreline because, again, we love the fact that Muskoka is Muskoka. Sorry to vent for a second, but if you want to cut down all the trees, you should stay in the city. And that's not our heart at all. And so we just want to have this passed so that we can close our permits. And we did this based on the building permit, which either there was an error in the building permit or it was read wrong, but there was supposed to be a breezeway between the garage and the house, making them one structure, and the permit was issued and it said remove the post and roof section. So we did that. And once we did that, the lay of the land changed and we couldn't put it back. And so we've had to have this variance as set this way. So we want to work with the town just to have this completed. And I'm happy to have any questions or any input.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Council members, comments or questions? Councilor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And it's more of a comment, but I guess it's more of just a comment that it reminds us that there are just regular people that just want to do things with their homes, and that, we have to follow the rules, but really, both parties have been very good stewards of the land. So I thank you for that. So I have no problems with this application at all.
Great. Councilor Morrison.
Just a quick question maybe to Kelsey. And first of all, I know you're saying Gia is from Bracebridge, but she's always been a Huntsville person to me for a lot of years. So I'd say you're both Huntsville people. On the removal of the cooking equipment, I understand that needs to happen for certain situations. Now, if there was a situation where somebody had a residential rental in there, or if it was ever a possibility, would we have a different take on that? Or is there something somebody could add later if they want to have a rental for housing?
Thank you for the question, through you, Chair Stone. So a secondary residential dwelling unit is not a permitted use within the waterfront area, and that is reflected in our official plan and Muskoka's, the Muskoka official plan. So in past instances, we've brought those forward for amendments or now class 3s. But yeah, because of those overarching policies, staff haven't been able to recommend approval, but yeah, so that's the answer.
Great, thanks for that. Any other comments? I see none. So moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Clark. This very long motion. I'm going to waive the reading of that and go directly to the question. All in favor? And that carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Moving on to the height and density policy updates. I need to read both these. All right. All right. You guys do your thing first, and then I'll read the motion.
Okay, thank you. We're back again to present the height and density policy update. Following the open house and public meeting, staff have reviewed all comments received and have addressed them through a revised amendment. And today we're going to outline our recommended changes to the CPPA, the draft bylaw, and our recommendation for the height and density policy updates. So just a really quick recap, this is only applying to the urban settlement area as highlighted on screen. And these are some of the key policy changes overall. So a lot of these have remained the same, and we'll go over the changes, but the things that we're looking at are the suitability mapping, the hill crown overlays, the increased permission in highly suitable areas for 15 meters, performance standards, changes to the height definition, terms of reference for the landscape and visual impact study, incorporating the 23 significant views, and also the revegetation guide, and then some guidance for facility services and community benefits. And lastly, the adoption of our height and density review guide. But we'll go over the details of the changes that we made based on the comments, and I'll let Madeline go over those.
Thanks, everyone. So just to start off with some changes to the Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment, so CPPA 08. One of our first changes deals with section 2.5.2. And shown on screen, there was just a revision to subsection A, which respects the application of the multi-residential height definition. So this was removed from this section and relocated to a different section within the bylaw, as the definition applies more broadly and is not limited to solely to areas of high suitability. So we just wanted to make that clear. Additionally, a subsection was added, so subsection C, shown in red, to require that any variation to height provisions within areas of high suitability be subject to a Class 3 community planning permit and the submission of a satisfactory landscape and visual impact study. And further, just wanting to clarify, as this has come up, a landscape visual impact study would only be required for development proposals exceeding 15 meters in height in highly suitable areas. And in all other areas, developments exceeding 13.2 meters. And 13.2 meters is that 20% Class 2 variation limit. So an easy way to think about it, any community planning, any application increasing height that would require a Class 3 application would require the submission of a landscape visual impact study. Also, this is a slight correction needs to be done to the height and density review guide just to make this change really clear. So staff have a motion just to address this. And additionally, through clarifying this, staff have decided that to increase some flexibility, we're also proposing that a planning justification report and or a landscape visual impact study could be submitted as part of a Class 3 CPP application to address staff's requirements. So just to make things super clear, we have a motion to clarify that. and would be happy to answer any questions about that if there's any confusion. So moving on to the next one, dealing with section 2.5.3.2, subsection F was amended to require that variations to landscape buffers along the interior and rear lot line be subject to a class 3 CPP application rather than prohibiting variations at all. Again, this is just done to increase some flexibility.
Yeah, similar to what Madeline was just saying, we also removed subsection 2.5.3.7, which required that all changes to the performance standards would be a class 3. And by removing that, because they're within the general provisions, it makes it a class 2 CPP. So it gives a bit more flexibility. As we heard in our comments, that it was going to be hard to always make these, especially if there's more minor changes to the performance standards, always a class 3. But there's also that flexibility should staff feel that it's warranted to bump it up to a class 3 if needed, if there's a lot of variations to those performance standards. And the other change is that 2.5.3.8, adding that in to recognize that where there are already site-specific amendments and approvals, that the performance standards wouldn't apply. So anything before the passage of this bylaw, we've already reviewed it, we've worked with the applicant to get it to a certain point, and so these wouldn't be in addition to what's already been provided. And then we also did some renumbering just for clarity, but the change here also talks about in note F, this is in the residential precinct table, just really clarifying when provisions for facility services and matters for community benefits are required in highly suitable areas. So reflecting what council said earlier, and then also adding note H and I, which talk about using the multi-residential height definition and when that's applicable. And then, as Madeline talked about earlier, requiring a landscape visual impact study for variations over 20%.
So very similarly to the amendments previously that Kelsey mentioned, there were some renumbering done. Also, note H was revised to clarify properties located in areas of high suitability are subject to sections 2.5.2 and 2.5.3 of the bylaw, as well as provisions of servicing with community benefits in accordance with section 2.4. Also, note J was added, which deals with the multi-residential development height, and note K was added that talks about a landscape visual impact study being required for height variations beyond 20 meters. And like I previously mentioned, this would be amended to say planning justification report and or landscape visual impact study. Further, the multi-residential height definition was additional language was added to the bottom. This was to clarify that this definition does not apply to buildings on land subject to previous site-specific amendment, previous site-specific amendments, or CPP approvals where height provisions were already increased through such approvals. And these would be listed already in section 6 or appendix C of our bylaw. And in these cases, the current definition of height would continue to apply to those lands. And the last amendment deals with a site-specific provision being added to the Paisley Center development. This is at 13 Madeline Street and 0 Shea Road. And this would clarify that the height definition in effect at the time of passage of the bylaw respecting these lands, so bylaw 2026-17, would continue to apply to these lands. And in summary, the proposed height and density policy updates provide clearer criteria and a more defined planning review process for proposals seeking increased height and density, while also permitting building heights of up to 15 meters in highly suitable areas. The policies as drafted ensure that development with increased height and density respect Huntsville's urban character, protect natural heritage features and areas, and promote compatibility with surrounding existing development. The proposed official plan and community planning permit amendment conform to the intent of the official plan and are consistent with the provincial planning statement. As such, staff are recommending approval of the official plan amendment 10 and community planning permit bylaw amendment 08. And we also want to thank council so much for your feedback and participation throughout this process. And we're happy to answer any questions and also clarify the proposed motion as we noted.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to council. Comments or questions? I'm sure there's some. Mayor Alcock first.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you both for this final presentation. It's pretty exciting. I want to start by saying I absolutely support this, have in the past, but I really support it now. I think your last comment around what it does, it protects character and the natural heritage features that we so love in our community. But it also promotes increased density and height in areas that we've identified. And I think that if we were looking for a policy that pursues aggressive housing implementation in our town, this probably doesn't do it. There are other municipalities that are on a faster track, like Aurelia or Barrie or whatever. But if we're also looking at a policy that doesn't promote any increased height and density, well, this doesn't do that either. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a moderate move. And I think for that reason, it works really well, because in the very beginning, we heard from a number of people that we need to protect the character of who we are. And this is full of, as Richard always talks about, belts and suspenders, right? It's saying we've identified areas that we think are highly suitable for that minimum, the 15 meter. Having said that, we also are going to provide you with guidelines, design guidelines. So someone said to me recently about, well, you should definitely have step back, and we have step back. We're talking about those things that make a development a good development, not just, you know, we need more housing, here you go, and forget all of the rest. Well, all of the rest really matters to our community. So I think that, and I do like the fact that you've made a couple of changes to provide a bit more flexibility, because we heard that. We heard that at the Developers Roundtable even last week. And we know that there will be a couple of developers that this will just never, ever satisfy. But to me, it's an incremental approach. It says that we do want to address projects that need to be 4 stories or even 5, but in these areas. And we will work with you to ensure that it's a really great development. So I just wanted to say all of that. I'm really pleased with this, and I'm supporting it.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. I feel similar to Mayor Alcock on a lot of things. I just I chatting with Director Maxwell and Richard. As it stands right now, I love it. We did it for a reason, but I don't know if I can push forward today, only because of we ordered this to protect the character of Huntsville, because we knew big buildings were coming. We knew there was areas where it was justified and areas where it was not. We wanted to have a roadmap for developers to know where we would encourage this to happen. Makes it every bit better for everybody. But since we went down this road, Bill 97, Bill 98 have come out, Bill 100 have come out, and there's a lot of changes happening. And if you look at the summary of such a thing, it says the Bill 98 that came out is considered the most significant planning, one of the most significant planning alterations in the provincial history, in the province's history. And right now, unfortunately, parts of our bylaw would contravene that legislation. And what I'm worried about is a potential impact on the taxpayer if it creates more conflict in OLT hearings if our bylaw doesn't conform. Now, we do know we're a bit insulated because we're under a CPP, but there's nowhere in there specifically exempting municipalities under a CPP. So I think because of that gray area and the fact that we don't know where we're at with that yet, it's really tough for me to move forward. If we end up with more developments at the OLT because we're trying to protect the character of Huntsville, and the province is saying we want 1.5 million homes, get out of the way. It could cost the taxpayers more money on defending OLT hearings, and it might impact our ability to accomplish our goal. So I think at the moment, I think I need more information. I think I need something more definitive from the province to us to know whether we are exempt before we put something in that would contravene Bill 98. That's where I'm at.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Just some comments. Firstly, I want to thank the planning staff for the work that you've done. It's clear a great deal of effort's gone into the policy, so thank you for that. I've been pretty consistently against the policy as it's worked its way through the planning department. And that's because I believe that this policy could be used to fundamentally alter Huntsville in the future. By design, the policy allows for much taller buildings in Huntsville while encouraging developers to build them, albeit with precaution measures. It may accelerate us further away from the town that many of us grew up in and love, and that's my concern. While others may view the policy as a protective measure, I see it a bit differently. To me, the policy poses a threat to Huntsville's identity rather than safeguarding it. And once that identity is lost, we may never get it back. We haven't yet seen how higher buildings that this council has already approved will actually look when they're built, as opposed to the plans on paper. It may be a bit of a shock to see how they actually look when they're built. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting the policy today.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Just to follow up on Councillor Clark here, I agree that the fact that we're protecting our community, but I think this does protect our community. I think it sets the standard for the builders to build where we think they fit and not where they don't fit. And I think that's what brings us to the OLT when they want to build buildings on slopes, etc. And the Councillor Morrison about Bill 97, 98, etc. If we wait for the province to make those decisions, we'll be here next year discussing this. So I think we need to move ahead, and we can adjust in the fly if we have to. As for going to the OLT, they bring it here to us, we discuss it, and if it fits, we can approve it, even though we have a policy on heightened density. So we have the tools still in our toolbox to be able to make it work. So I'll be approving this today.
For me, Councillor Fitzgerald, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Stone, and thanks everyone for the comments and staff. I know how much effort has gone into this. I think we've had a very consultative approach with the public and respected the input that we have received. I think it's a good move for the developers who now know which locations we have approved, and they can have a reasonable expectation of a speedy process in the planning stages and breaking ground and building. As far as preserving the heritage of Huntsville and what we are and what we want it to be moving forward, we can't stop growth, and I think we've done a very good job of trying to manage how it does grow and where it grows. So I will be supporting this. And as far as the OLT comments, I think I can't see an increase from my point of view, but I will be supporting it.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And a lot has been said around the table, but I just want to reiterate what Councillor Clark said about staff and the amount of work and time that not just the planning staff, but also the GIS staff have put into this. I think we are one of many municipalities around the province of Ontario that are dealing with heightened density. And we are struggling with how to be progressive and how to prosper and how to grow in our community. But we also want to still maintain why people come to our community. And that's what Councillor Clark was talking about. We love the rocks, the trees, the water. But how do you find that balance? And I think what staff has given us today really is a tool. And I think it's well conceived. I think it's thoughtful. I'm not going to feel pressured by Bill 97 at this point, or 98, sorry, even Bill 100. it will come down the road as well. We'll have to deal with it, but I think at this point, this gives us a tool to move forward. I love the character of our town, and I sit on the historical board. I understand, like I see that the history that's here, but I also see that things are changing, and it doesn't have to mean that we are changing for the worse. We are changing for the better. So I am in favor of this. I think it's a tool in our toolbox that we can use. We can still deny applications if we want to, if we need to, but this gives us an ability to stop it or to slow it down. And I think I'd rather have the tool in our toolbox than not. So I am in favor of this.
So for me, we're growing like it or not, and that's been said already around the table. So we need to ask ourselves, do we want to say where it's appropriate to grow and where it's not? I think this sets forth for the future a plan that we can live with. And more importantly, I have heard from developers about this plan that said, thank you for clarifying where it's okay for us to build high and where it's not. And we went to the public and we said, what do you love about this place? What are the vistas you want to keep? And our staff and the GIS people mapped it out and made it perfectly clear that these places will never be touched. You cannot build on the tops of these hills ever, or you can't go high at the waterfront. It protects what we love about this place. So I'm going to go to Councillor Morrison first.
I just want to offer just some clarity to the reason for my comments is that the fact that we have the CPP, of course, seems to insulate us, but the problem is the Bill 98 clearly says that our official plan needs to conform with the province's priorities and the province's plan. I don't like it. I don't like that the province is sticking their nose into our planning process where we're trying to put checks and balances in to protect the character of the town, but it's there, and our CPP derives its authority from our official plan. So if we're deriving our authority from the official plan to make these changes, and it's in contravention of provincial legislation, then we're just setting us up for more conflict, work, and everything else. So I think for me, I like it. I love what the staff has done. I don't think we expected this amazing of a report when we asked for it. And it's been lauded by so many people. The staff work is amazing. I just want to make sure we implement it right. And I don't think what's in front of us right now is fully baked and ready to go. I think we need to look into if there's any contravention with provincial legislation, what we can do to make sure we pass the bylaw in the perfect way so that we're not setting ourselves up for more work conflict and cost to taxpayers. So that's why.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick comment. You know, I look at this as I mentioned earlier, something in our toolbox. Just to the south of us in Bracebridge, you're looking at building a 6-story building. So we're looking at 4-story buildings here. So I think we're doing what's right for Huntsville right now, and not allowing developers to come and try to put 6-story buildings in Huntsville.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I just, I really liked Councillor Renwick's comment about this adds another tool in our box. And I think that that's exactly what this does. I hear what Councillor Morrison is saying. I totally get it. Bill 98 is a huge threat to how we might do things going forward. But at this point, we all know how long it takes for provincial legislation to filter through and all of the decisions to be made. I feel like I really believe we should move forward with this policy. It's a tool, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it if someone wants to test it. I think the deputy made that comment earlier that, you know, we have the authority to do that. And I don't think any one of us really want to end up at the OLT all the time. So I think we cross that bridge when we come to it.
All right. I see no more hands. I'm going to read the motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that amendment number 10 to the Town of Huntsville official plan as outlined in attachment number 1 to report DEV 2026-52 be adopted and forwarded to the District of Muskoka for approval. Final comments? All in favor? All opposed? And that carries. All right, we have a motion to amend, which was mentioned by Kelsey and Madeline. Be it moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitute motion DEV 2026-52 CPPA 08-2026 HTE height and density policy updates for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 08-2026 HTE height and density policy updates as outlined in attached number 2 to report DEV 2026-52 as amended to insert the words planning justification report and or in the, can you make it any bigger? I'm not getting any younger over here. In front of the words landscape visual impact study, wherever such words appear, and purpose and effect, and the purpose and effect of which is to implement height and density policy updates, and further that Planning Council approve the height and density review guide as outlined in attachment number 3 to report DEV 2026-52 for implementation in accordance with subsection 2.5.1E of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 as amended with updates to clarify requirements for a landscape visual impact study. Boy, that was a mouthful. Does anyone need clarification on that? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. All opposed? And that carries. All right. That was. Okay. We're almost there, folks. Richard's going to speak. Oh, before you guys go, thank you so much. Ton of work. It was truly. All this work was done in-house with our staff, and our GIS staff went over and above. It's a beautiful document. Thank you all. New PPI. Kirsten,
Thank you.
Director Maxwell.
I just was going to mention that Madeline and Kelsey are going to be presenting this work at OPPI this year at the conference, which is thousands of Ontario planners will be listening to everything they've got to say about how it all came about.
Congratulations. All right. All right, and lastly, Richard's going to speak to the CPP bylaw review that we've just gone through. Got it. Thanks, folks. Thanks for enduring all that. You can stay.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, perfect. So through you, Mr. Chair, as noted in the report, the May 2026 final recommendations report prepared by Strategy Corp that looked at our community planning permit system and bylaw is done. And in this report, we're looking for council to endorse the report's recommendations and to direct staff to implement the recommendations through immediate, near, medium, and long-term actions that would be built on the built into the planning department's work plan priorities. So attachment number 1 to the report is Strategy Corp's final recommendation report. And of course, you heard Strategy Corp present that at, was it council at the end of May? Just to recap, there are 18 recommendations in that report, and they're organized under 5 key opportunities. So the first is to improve pre-consultation consistency, clarity, and value. The second is to improve permit application quality. The third is to streamline application processing, review, and issuance. The fourth is to calibrate the bylaw triggers and exemptions. And the fifth is to establish service standards and accountability structures. Attachment 2 to the report is just a table that staff prepared where we looked at the 18 recommendations and identified which ones we felt could be done immediately, which ones could be done in the near term, medium term, and long term. And then also some of them that we don't recommend doing. And there was really only one. And attachment number 3 is basically taking those timelines and slotting them into our previous priorities list and updating the priorities list based on these new recommendations. So that's the report in a nutshell. Thanks. I'm here to answer any of your questions, and let's go Canada. Oh, for sure.
Council, comments or questions? Seeing none. Looks like you did a great job. Of course, Councillor Morrison.
No more, just a comment. I think this, again, the chance to applaud our staff and council for, first of all, the staff that implemented the CPP, knowing that there's a lot of room to make our planning process better, and then identifying now that it's been implemented, we've seen some choke points and want to make it better. So I think that's come well. I think this is could be a starting point. I think there's more we can do, but we have 18 action items that staff is equipped to go forward with. And I think we have other big plans in the future to keep it getting better. So just want to applaud staff for all the work on it. And it's really good.
Thank you for that. I agree. Any other comments or questions? I see none. I do have a motion. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that Council endorses the Town of Huntsville Community Planning Permit System and Bylaw Review Final Recommendations Report as detailed in Attachment 1 to Report DEV 2026-53, including the policy and process recommendations contained therein. And further that staff be directed to utilize the Town of Huntsville Community Planning Permit System and Bylaw Review Final Recommendation Report as a reference guide document to update the Planning Department's internal operating procedures and work plan priorities where necessary to support its implementation as detailed in attachments number 2 and number 3 to Report DEV 2026-53. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thanks, Richard.
I know,
Killing me.
I know. I'm sorry.
Do we have to do it again?
I don't, do we, can we just say?
I can put it on the screen now.
Yes, if you don't.
And you can tell me what.
All right, apparently there's some numbers that were wrong in the previous motion. 2 previous motions ago.
Yeah, sorry. It was the reference to the attachments. We'd said, I think, in the previous attachment 1 and attachment 2, but it's 2 and 3. Is that 3 and 4? Sorry, it's meant to be 3 and 4. That, yeah, is what he's doing right? Sorry. Three and sorry.
Is that correct now? That's the difference?
I think in the first paragraph, instead of attachment 2, it should be number 3. Okay. There.
On the second one, it should be 4
Just 4.
instead of 3.
Yeah. So sorry about that, but that's just clarifying that this is what, yeah.
All right, Council, you've seen the amendments here. Does anyone have an appetite to reread the motion? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to make the decision to move along and let staff make that change. All right. Development charges, reduction program. Are you speaking to this, Director Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair Stone. So this program, I believe everyone may be aware of it. So the province and the federal government announced a development charge reduction program that is programs intended to reduce development charges, to lower the cost of new housing, and fund housing enabling infrastructure to help offset municipal revenue. And what they're proposing is that a municipality would agree to commit to reducing development charges for all residential development. You can't pick and choose what type of residential development you would reduce. By anywhere from 30 to 50%, you would have to have the reductions in place for a minimum of 3 years. And then you apply for funding to fund a project that would help enable more housing. So the costs would be up to 90% of eligible project costs could be funded by the federal and provincial governments, with a minimum of 10% of a municipal contribution. And the way they've structured it so far is that the eligible projects start off with what's considered the top priority, which is potable water, stormwater, wastewater, and then it goes into more infrastructure like roads, bridges, things like that. And then down at the bottom is community infrastructure. So the assessment criteria is going to depend on how many houses you reliably think could be enabled based on the project that you're submitting and the reduction in your DCs. So the problem that we've been made aware of is just that the province announced this this grant program last week, and it's closing next week. So councils would have to decide very quickly if we do have a project that could enable us to get more housing faster or not, and what that looks like, and then whether or not there would be any value in reducing the DCs. So for us at this point, projects have to be in our DC study that we did in 2020 or on a capital plan. And from all of the discussions we've had with the Developers Roundtable and the projects that we have on the books moving forward, there isn't anything that we can directly link and say, if we do this, this will enable more housing in Huntsville as it stands. Everything we hear is that it's all about the water and sewer capacity for reasons why housing isn't moving ahead faster, and interest rates and all those other things that aren't within our control. So staff are not recommending that we make any changes at this point, but I think it would be great if we could support the district and encourage the district to look at their development charges, because they have more opportunity with the water and sewer to have a greater impact on housing that could move ahead. So, and I'll try and answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Director Maxwell? It's a little disappointing. Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I'm not surprised, though. I mean, once again, it's sort of, here's this program, but you've got, we can have to do something. But in defense of the focus on water sewer, any AMO or Roma meeting that we've always attended, we've always said, this is where we fall down. This is a huge expense, certainly in Muskoka, and we need help with that. So that's what they've heard over and over again. So the focus on that, and I guess the part that you're saying, Kirsten, is it needs to be in our plan. I think of one bridge in our community down the road, that the Center Street Bridge, but again, it's correlation to new housing. And that also makes it, why is it these programs are so convoluted? That's what I wanted to say. But I appreciate your review of it. Thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank Director Maxwell for jumping on this. Like, the timeline was insane. Like, you know, it's a program that's supposed to come out and try to encourage municipalities to take steps to make housing more affordable by decreasing DCs. And we know that just decreasing DCs would help. But then they make the program so complicated with such a tight timeline. And then it sounds like you have to take the step and then find out later if you might get funding. And that's a big risk when you think of our DC study and how much is on it. So I'm kind of hoping, I agree with your synopsis of it where we are right now. And I'm wondering, because it was an $8.8 billion partnership with the Feds and the province, that maybe if it's undersubscribed, we might see some modifications, and maybe down the road there will be easier path for us. But at the moment, I think we're taking the right step.
Any other comments or questions about DCs or this plan? All right. Then I have nothing else. I'm going to move on to our confirmation bylaw. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2026-53 be received and passed this 10th day of June 2026. All in favor? And that carries. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that we do now hereby adjourn at 2:05 p.m. All in favor? And that always carries. Thanks, everyone.